I'd like us to begin with Kunzum, if on the behalf of Own Books International, if you could just hand over flower bouquet to ma'am. So Amitava, we'll just start with you as the author and person on the hot seat. Tapan Sinha, it says a lot about Bengali cinema of a certain era that a filmmaker like Tapan Sinha was kind of relegated to. He didn't get his due at that point of time with the Ray and with Satyajit Ray and Mrinal Sen and Ritik Khattar. The big three sort of overshadowed somebody like Tapan Sinha. Your take on that? And
hello. Yeah. I think Tapan Sinha's Tapan Sinha in Bangla started off making films in 1954, so mid-1950s, and he made films till 2000. I think most of his films, the Bengali ones, which were made between the 1950s, mid-50s till probably the 70s, were well received at the national level, at the international film festivals, national film festival, national film awards. And there was a general perception of entertainment associated with Tapan Sinha's films, which were more cerebral in nature. Now, from 80s in Bangla cinema itself, we will find that there has been a slightly change in the definition of what we think as entertaining films. But I don't think that Tapan Sinha did not get his dues, at least in the first half of his career. It's more that we forgot him after he stopped making films. So he should have had a legacy, and that legacy doesn't exist. But during his lifetime, at least during his prime, I think he got his dues in terms of the awards, in terms of box office as well. So I don't think he didn't get his dues. He didn't want to make films the way probably Mrinal Sen made films, or he didn't want to make films the way Ritik Khattar made films. He's probably closer to Satyajit Ray. That's why he's always, I think, not very just thing from the audience to compare always someone with Satyajit Ray.
I think he was very popular.
He was very popular.
And well appreciated, because he made Kabuliwala, because that's the first time I met him, and I was very young at that point. And my sister Tinku, she had a wonderful name called Oindrila, but nobody called her Oindrila, it was always Tinku. And she was 5 years old, and she played Minnie in Kabuliwala with Chobi Vishwash. And Tapan Sinha and Tapan Sinha, as you rightly pointing out, was my mother's friend with Kunzum Day, and they were dropping in at home, and I kind of got to a Tapan Kaku to me, like Tapan uncle. So, and Minnie became a household name after film release. She was very popular. And during shooting also, one day she would say, well, if you don't put lipstick on my lips, on my teeth, I won't perform, I won't smile. And I want Chinese today. And Chobida, we call him Chobi Vishwash Chobida, to respect. And it took him quite a long time to wear his turban and to get that, that Afghan mode. So she just went and quickly took off his pagri. So that was, because she was a star. I mean, I don't think in my life I'd behave like that. I want Chinese today and get it, So, and from then on, and even when I started working in films, I worked with him in Nirjan Saikate. I believe your film showing that.
Yes.
See, the problem, sorry, I'm toing and froing, but when you say, because many of our films of Satyajit Ray also, his films were restored after much effort because he was kind of a global phenomenon. But Tapan Kaku was more, Bengal based and then a little bit outside because he did make Hindi films also. So his films were not so. So even when I went to Cannes, they were lamenting that they said we want to have a retrospective of Mrinal Sen, but the films are not restored. The quality of the film is so poor that we cannot. Since then, of course, Mrinal Sen's films have been restored. So when you are watching a film, the sound quality, the visual quality makes a lot of difference, So, sometimes you can't even hear, can't even see. So, being a technical medium, it has to come through. So, but I think all his films reflected his own thinking, and he was such a cultured and erudite person. And like Hodro Lok, as we would say in Bengali, I've never seen him raise his voice, never heard him raise his voice, never seen him in a temper or anything. Always amai and smiling and sometimes very serious looking also. But so all his films, I would say, have some kind of message and some kind of a focus which is very important, very, very important. I mean, Kabuliwala, of course, was quite a few of his other films were Tagore-based. Then he made adventure films, Chindir Bondi. Then he made children's film. Then he made, I was in the jury, I forget which year, for the National Film Festival.
81.
80-ish, yes, because by that time I moved to...
must be 84.
84. Yes, Modified Shumai and Adul Gopalakrishnan had Mukha Mukham at that time. So this film was got the Nagis the award for national integration. So it was just two people and they're just, I would say a chance meeting.
Yes.
So, and this lady, I don't know why she's going from one village to the nearest hospital, which is miles away, and through a very, very harsh terrain. Like there are hills to climb, and there are valleys to cross, etc., etc. And she's pregnant, hugely pregnant, almost 9 months pregnant. And this man, how he helps her to go through. And once he reaches the hospital, then he realizes this was a Muslim woman and he was Hindu. So it's not really black and white, but there is a kind of a subtle, without explaining too much or getting into it. He may have had some prejudice earlier, we don't know. But the fact is that when you peel off the layers or the identity or the tag, then as essential human beings, people help each other and people are drawn to each other and then our goodness comes through, And it's only what other people will say, I mean, that sort of a thing. So every film of his, and of course he brought Vajantimala to Kolkata and Nidit Kumar, Sakina Mahapro, which was made in Bengali as well as in Hindi, with Saira Banu, Ashok Kumar was of course Bengali, but yes. So he did that, so he was well respected. I mean, it's not easy for a Bengali gentleman or a director to go to Bombay and speak to Dilip Kumar and convince him to come and work with him. So he had, because of his learnedness, if there is such a word, he could reach and talk to various people and convince them of his. So, he was a very special person, and even Shomitra often told me after Maninda passed away that if he had to talk to somebody and had to learn something, he would go to Papa Babu to talk about films. So they shared this passion. They were passionate about films. They were not businessmen or making films for money. So I don't think it's a proper comparison if you say Satyajit Ray, Mrinal Sen and Ritik Ghatuk was making films of a different kind, and Ajay Gaur and Ashit Sen and Tapan Kaku was making films of different kind. It's not, they were all making films and they're all making films passionately. But his films, I mean, like the film that you're going to see, I hope the print is alright. I saw it because somebody invited. So please ask me to stop, otherwise I can carry on. So I went to Edinburgh. A Scottish gentleman called Mark Cousins, a film buff, he walked in with his kilt and everything and said, we are organizing a film festival and will you come? So I assumed that it would be Satyajit Ray. So when I said, which film of Satyajit Ray? He said, no, it's not Satyajit Ray. It's Tapan Sinha, it's Ritik Ghatuk, and it's Mrinal Sen. But Tapan Sinha was very much there. So I said yes, and I was really quite excited. I said, really? I mean, you're going to do a film festival only of these and not Satyajit Ray? He said, yes, we are aware of Tapan Sinha's film and we would like to showcase. So I mean, he was well known and had better reach and well appreciated. But Manika, because of his international exposure, got better, yes.
Well, you mentioned Tapan Sinha having the stature to convince somebody like Dilip Kumar. What did it take for him to convince you for Nirjan Saikate?
Well, I was beginning my career. After I did a couple of films with Satyajit Ray, Poku Shamshar and Devi while I was in school. So when I finished my school, I went to college, but I've said this in many forums. So when I joined college, then I was simultaneously became a professional actor. Because other films I didn't take any money. I mean, it was working with Ray. So here I was a professional actor, and my first Bengali film was Sheshanko, and Uttam Kumar, and then second and third, I don't know which order.
Bornali was there.
Probably was Nirjan Saikate. Because I know, because I was working in Bombay with Kashmiri Kali. And you know how Bengalis are, and it's very, very parochial, very, we are the best, and we know everything. And Bombay films are the bits, and we make sort of much better films.
You are the best.
Bombay films are all, songs and dance, and not to be taken seriously. So they were all giving me attitude, I mean, from Satyajit Ray to Kashmiri Kali, sort of like that. Tapan Kaku said that, her Bengali has become, the spoken Bengali, the pronunciation has become so much better after working with him. I mean, I remember it. I mean, he was kind of very supportive. And again, without raising, how he spoke. I mean, so softly, I mean, you had to strain your ear to hear it. But it was just, and then of course the entire unit became quiet. They didn't say anything after that. Because it was happening, doing and fro. So probably it was my second film.
How was it? What was the experience like? And you've mentioned at one forum about this wonderful thing with Robi Ghosh.
Yes.
Like, if you could just give us.
Well, mainly we shot in Puri. It was mainly an outdoor film, but a little bit of indoor. I don't remember the indoor, but the outdoor was unforgettable. And Ruby Ghosh and I became friends there. And I remember the evenings we used to there were a lot of ghost stories were being told to each other and scaring. So in the middle of a ghost story when we were all getting scared and suddenly somebody pushed their arm through, made a funny noise, and all of us screamed. And we were all very young. How old was I? It was 16-ish, perhaps 17, not even 16. And I remember Jaya Bhanuri, her father was a journalist who was a friend of Tapan Sinha. So he had come, and Jaya came along. So she was 13, very young. So we had a lot of fun. And Robida and I used to go to the beach, taking our transistors along where Ghulam Ali was. So that's when I realized that, when you are in front of the sea and there's that front of the element, something as vast as that, only that classical voice can really, hold together. So I've often talked about the Jugalbandi or the confluence of cultures, and I think that's what you were referring to, yes. You said one of the Malhara is also about that his voice and the waves crashing was a perfect Jugalbandi, yes. So, but it was a beautiful shoot, and then you will see his point of view. There's a character that Ashik Baram plays, surrounded by women. I mean, at that time people didn't really talk about these things, but he did, and brought out the goodness in the man rather than the qualities that you can, whereby he could be judged, like anti-social kind of feeling. And also the widows. We all got national award.
Yeah, the only film that has all five actresses winning the national
got the
award.
national award, the best actresses, which is so wonderful. And there was all these veterans, Molina Devi, Bharati Devi, and Chaya Devi. Ruma was much younger, but the other four, I think Chaya Devi was there. I mean, they were all much older, and as widows, they were not allowed to do so many things. There were so many, they couldn't eat this, couldn't go anywhere. And when they went into the sea, they were so happy. They were all like young people. Such sense of liberation. So all that is, and Ruma is a recent widow sort of a thing. And I, being part of them, who's just been jilted by somebody. So it was just beautiful. And then when Rumadi sings that song, Dako Dako Shukotara, that was lovely. Renuka Devi was lovely.
Amitava, one of the things is with Tapan Sinha is that the vast genres he addressed, He was with Kudito Pashan and Kabuliwala, it was Tagore, with Chinde Bundi, it was adventure, totally, sort of swashbuckling. We hadn't had that kind of an adventure in Bengali cinema.
Yes.
Yeah. And then, of course, socially conscious films, Aponjon reflected the lumpenization of student politics. Years later, Atomko did that again in a certain way. Adalat TV. So it was there's this whole diversity of things that he did. Did that come in the way of his being evaluated more fairly as an author?
See, Tapan Sinha, there is one thing which everyone says about Tapan Sinha is that no two films are similar, right? But there is a streak which flows through most of his films. That streak somehow didn't go down well with the Bengali intelligentsia of the 70s and the 80s, which was mostly a left liberal sort of a mass. Means the film society and the film schools critics, they were mostly, not all, but mostly having a sort of a leftist ideology in place. Whereas Tapan Sinha's films, if you look at these films, it is about an individual, about individual struggles. And the film which I want to mention here is made in 1980 called Mancharamer Bagan.
Yeah.
So Mancharamer Bagan's character, played by Manoj Mitro, is a character who refuses to die against everything, right? So that was Tapan Sinha's singular spirit in his cinema. That everywhere, if you mention Atomko, it's that individual who refuses to die. So that was his philosophy in most of his films. But about the diversity part, is he started off as a filmmaker who made films from literature, mostly Tagore stories. And not only Tagore stories, like most of the other films are also, like Jinder Mandir, Shorodindu Bandyopadhyay. So most of those films were taken from literature. But very interestingly, in the end of
Jinder Mandir was Prisoners of
Jender's Bengali adaptations by Shorodindu. And then he made Jodugriho with Uttam Kumar and Arun, which is also based on Samaj Ghosh's novel, short story. Published story. But very interestingly, where Tapan Sinha has to be looked slightly differently from Ajay Rashid Sen, is in the late 60s and the early 70s. That's the period when Kolkata and Bengal was going through the turmoil and the Nakshal period. And you'll see that there is a Calcutta trilogy of Satyajit Ray, and there's a Calcutta trilogy of Mrinal Sen, and there is also a Calcutta trilogy of Tapan Sinha with Aponjon, Ekhoni and Raja. So that is very important. That he was a socially conscious filmmaker comes across. Not taking away anything from anyone, but Ajay was still making Maldodan, which is a very good film. Craft perspective is a very good film, but in 1969 and 70 he was making Maldodan followed by Purinita. Great films, but based on literature which dates back maybe 50 years back. But Tapan Sinha is making Ekhoni and Aponjon. That is the time when he is writing his own stories for his films. Then in Atomko, that was in the 80s, Atomko Adalote Time in 82, then Atomko in 1984-85, and Amdothan, he was again making sudden changes in the way. So the angst is becoming more sharper.
Yes. He kept growing.
He kept growing.
Shobuj Debe Raja children.
Yeah, of course, Shobuj Debe Raja and Safed Hathi for children's film, fantasy like Akchilo. It was a total fantasy.
It's also very interesting because we brought up Satyajit Ray's reference. Is that if you see that after the Calcutta trilogy of Satyajit Ray, Satyajit Ray went to the children's films, and Tapan Sinha was more or less the same period, also went to children's films. And these two filmmakers, probably in their philosophy, were similar, as compared to say Mrinal Sen and Ritwik Kapoor. So I have a feeling that they wanted to go to children as their hope. So that is my interpretation, that they wanted to go to children, make children's films, because they think that they don't have much hope with the teen or the adolescents and the teenagers or the youth, but they still have hope in the children.
You have also written extensively, and that is something I'd like to bring up because Sharmila has also been very closely associated with Soumitra Chatterjee. In fact, your first 4 Bengali films are with Soumitra. Of course, Apu Shankar and Devi, everybody talks about. We'll talk about a bit about Bornali and of course Kinu Bala Godi, and you have written, and I think these are films that are waiting to be discovered. I have been fortunate enough to find CDs and DVDs of this in ramshackle stores and seen them, but these need to be. And you have written extensively on Soumitra Chatterjee. You have actually had hours and hours of conversation and poetry. So if you could do some jugalbandi between the two of you on, and I just listen, your inputs on what Soumitra Chatterjee was as a man, as an actor. You spoke very eloquently on an article that we did together about Bornali and its rain scene, and the way they are walking and talking about romance and the way the dialogues are framed.
Bornali is a story of just one day, really, and sort of a mistakenly invitation comes
For a wedding.
For a wedding, to the wrong place, and what happens. So it's so riveting, really, because not once do you feel bored with it. And there are a lot of conversation, and so beautifully, because Ajay Kaur was also a cinematographer and understood frames, and it was black and white, so it is delightful to watch. But on the other hand, Kinubol really, with much difficulty, the print is almost gone. But that was also surprising, because I thought that, right at the beginning, without Photogitrai, probably my performances won't be very good. But I was happily surprised that they were quite strong and quite okay, even though, because now I've reached a stage when I can look back and judge myself without being, too dismissive or too whatever, like in a proper way. So I felt, I passed my test.
Both Bornali and Abushamsha, the romance of it is utterly charming.
And Shomitra is so gorgeous with his, Bengali dhoti and his charming smile. And he was he always wanted to be, unlike me, wanted to be an actor. As you know, he auditioned or he met Manika for Operajito, and then he was too old for that. And so he was a theatre person, so prolific. He was an actor on theatre, films, as well as he was a painter towards the end of his life. Then he wrote, he directed theatres, then he wrote, and he wrote poems. When we were shooting for Abar Orone, so he used to write on these chits, little pieces, and then he said, "Aaj ka meta likhi pore shonanchi." Then he would write, "These are for my grandchildren." So, and then he worked till the last, and amake he used to say, "Tumra to ato rozgar karo, amader to khute khete
hai." So, so much.
And then Moyurakhi the other day I saw. And how did I see? I saw it on a cell phone because someone sent it to me. And it was so brilliant, Autonomous. I recently went to Dhaka and I met Autonomous. I saw Sheshpaka also. But Moyurakhi was so good, and he was so good. So till the end, from Upushamshar till Moyurakhi and Balashesh and
it's
everything.
also a closer sorts, like the Nobushamshar ends with he carrying the son to the city, and in Moyurakhi ends with the son leaving the father and
leaving the father, and when he says, "Yamake chhere chole jabi," it was so. And then when he's painting that, he said, "Ami ekta jangla kore dilam. I've just done this window so that if he jokhon or mon kharap hobe, amake dekhte pabe." So it's so beautiful. So, and he really brought it to life. When we are saying it, it's something else, but when he acted, he was the character. And because of this huge, and when it was such a learning being for the outdoor of Orone Din Ratri and Abar Orone, because this Shubhendu and Shomitra would talk. And where one would end, the other would start, and they, it would continue. And I wish I had recorded that conversation. I really wanted to have a recorded conversation with Shomitra, because I think he would have relaxed with me and he would have talked to me like he did talk to you. He would have probably would have talked to me also, because we were really good friends. Although we didn't see each other every day or spoke to each other every day, but there was that. Like, I knew that if there was anybody said anything, he would always speak up for me. And he did. If there was any criticism ever, he would take my side. So it was like that between us. So we really lost such a learned person. He didn't, not only he was a authority on cinema and theatre, but also sports, politics. He had a view on everything, painters, plays. He apart from being well-read, he was a thinking person. So he had his own view on things. I mean, I don't think nowadays a kind of enjoyment one had listening to him or talking to him, it's not possible because everybody talks about how many crores their business has done and how many weeks it has run, and there is nothing beyond that self. That interest in the world around you, not just frog in the well. So that kind of varied interest. Unfortunately, with these people, now that they've gone, the others don't seem to have that kind of interest. Perhaps we are caught up in a vortex of competing with each other, and money has become the benchmark of everything. Earlier it wasn't like that, So there was more, the friendships meant something. And you didn't really question it, you took it for granted, So like sometimes when I feel that he's not there, I really feel that, oh my God, it's a huge loss that nobody, on my 75th birthday, a friend of mine did all these collected videos from all my friends. And Shobhitra was very, as you know, last 5 years, he was really not well. Despite that, he spoke and gave a very longish bite, which he didn't have to, and like he painted, he was working. So I think it was a very good way to go, working till the last. And of course, when he lost his, not lost, but when his grandson had that accident, it really broke him because after a long time, somebody from the family was doing well, there was hope, and that hope was crushed. So,
just one thing I will just continue from his thing, like she spoke about the painting part, and I happened to be with him some Sunday mornings when he had painted, say, a landscape of a mountain, and the landscape had these mountains had white snow, right? And one day, in particular, I remember he told me with childlike joy that, see, now I know why acrylic is used and not watercolor, because of the opacity. And he was showing me, okay, this is the one which I did with watercolor, and this is the one which I did with acrylic. And he would ask at that point, then konta bhalo lagche. So, but the bhalo laga part is not important. The important part which I wanted to tell is that he was past 80, but he had that amount of surprise in him.
And curiosity.
And the curiosity, that's why he read so many things about not only the of his profession, but otherwise as well, like about doctors, about different ailments, what are the things which can be used. So there is I think he also grew, I felt after speaking to him, his interest also grew after his long association with Shobhitra.
And one of the things that Tapan Sinha did very
also Tapan Sinha.
Yes,
I would say not just Shobhitra, because he told me how much he enjoyed and learned from Tapan Sinha.
Tapan Sinha did this almost blasphemous thing about casting him as the villain in one of the cults of, and placing him against two Uttam Kumars in one film. Could you talk about, and then the trajectory went through to Atonko and Wheelchair, which are just about the best performances in Indian cinema we can talk of. So if you could just talk of Jindelbandi and give them...
Jindelbandi is very, very interesting in the sense that, yes, Jindelbandi is an exception by Shobhitra standards as well, because he didn't act anywhere closer to that as a villain in any other films. Like, he also played a villain in Ghore Baire and some non-mentionables films, but the one in Jindelbandi was very difficult because, as you said, not only there are two Uttam Kumars, but it was heavily loaded for Uttam Kumar. But also in that, because of the dialogues and the way Tapan Sinha actually wrote the screenplay, there were enough chance and scope of Soumitra to shine through. And I think it took and before that, his image was that of a romantic poet. Most of the films in which he did with Sharmila ji and others like Kinuwala Goli and Bornali and all these films, he was this Dhuti Panjabi, Kobi, right, who doesn't care much about life as such. He will see like what comes.
Free spirit.
Free spirit of sorts. So that is one which I think that is probably one, but before that there was nothing in Obijan, which was a departure. But apart from that, Jindemundi is a remarkable film in that way. And coming to Atomko in mid-80s.
There's this wonderful sequence of his entry in a horse, which sort of is so, like he takes away everything that the film has to offer from everybody else. The way he sort of is lording it over in his.
No, and he leaves that scene, that particular scene, he leaves with a slang, Bandar Bacha, and then he leaves. So that itself, the way he says, and very strapping, like his grace and the way he was looking, and slightly changed the haircut with a very thin mustache.
This is one of the roles I think he has spoken about in this book also.
This book as well.
This book also has Soumitra talking about his favorite 20 roles that are not Satyajit Ray roles.
No, there are Ray's roles as well.
But about 14 of them are non-Satyajit Ray.
I wanted to keep the Satyajit Ray films less because, as Sharmila said, that every time from my friends who are writing in other languages as well, they say that okay, Soumitra is a reactor. Which he is, but he's much beyond being only just a reactor. So I think.
Do we talk about Koni?
Yes, we talk about Koni.
It's a Koni and
That was such a brilliant. And sometimes when you work with a good director, so obviously the performance will be good. But if you act with a director who's not so well known, or not that professional, and then you deliver a very good performance, I think that's even more worthy.
Even in Kinuwala Goli, the way he looks at a painting and articulates the spirit of Van Gogh's. Van Gogh's painting, he looks at it and that dreamy monologue he has, and the end of it where you and him are standing in this hope. It's brilliantly done.
Actually,
because everybody is leaving and they haven't left.
Kinuwala Goli is a very, I think, also Bornali. These films are not made now. Like it's so different. You find that this Kali Banerjee character and Soumitra Devi. So the relationship between them is so undefined in a sense. So a lot were not told through the films. I think that is one aspect which is missing. Everything has to be underlined and told. So there are a lot of things which were not told.
For both of you, standing in 2024, how do you see, how are the films of Soumitra Chatterjee, the films that Tapan Sinha made, how do you think they are relevant in today's day and age? What is it about them that makes them worthy of being emulated?
Because it has lived on. I mean, audience is still reacting to it, and the subject matter is relevant. So the films like Kabuliwala cannot age. Now Shubham Ghosh has remade Kabuliwala. The subject matter is evergreen. So the kind of subjects that Tapan Sinha also made, they are relevant even in today's time. And I would say the craft, like I saw Nirjan Saikate, perhaps I can say that it was a little verbose. There was lots of dialogues, but it all made sense. I mean, if you can cope with the words, like the philosophy really, Naushad Baru's character. So it's all, and the liberation I said earlier. So they speak to you even now because you understand that certain people in society are so deprived of, they are not allowed to do so many things. They don't have the freedom that we take for granted. or some people can live the way they want to because their spirit, etc. So Anil's character. So likewise, all his films are still relatable. So if the films are restored properly, I mean, they are definitely watchable, and black and white is a very good medium, I think. And at least the way these films were shot, the kind of photography, I mean, I find it worthy of watching.
Amitava, your take on the relevance of Tapan Sinha?
Tapan Sinha, I think, as we discussed, speaks about the spirit of the human spirit, actually, the triumph of the human spirit. So that will always remain. That is one. And his films, like, again, we can take up a number of examples, like Golpole Shakti. So it talks about human relations, right? So the human relations is a very important part of Tapan Sinha's films. And I think that is something which, even if like the families don't look the same as the families represented in those films, but I think the relations still remain. So that is what Tapan Sinha is relevant. As Sharmila said, that if those are not restored, like I remember watching Kulito Bashan for the first time, and I read a lot about the use of those Jaffrey art and the light emanating through those. I cannot make out anything.
Yeah.
Right? So I cannot just go on saying that this film is great, the craft is great, and someone who is watching it cannot make out anything. So that's why the restoration part is so important, and that's why I think Film Heritage Foundation is doing an absolutely gorgeous thing.
In fact, we should actually, forums like this, talk about and make more than Ray and Rinals, and get people like. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, wanted you to talk about, is Rinals in Tapan Sinha's. You mentioned very interestingly the phases of his. So if you could just shed light on that before we sort of open the phases.
The phases of his career. Yes.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting trajectory that he has.
Yes. So I think I just mentioned briefly, but I can try to elaborate a bit as well. So he started off with a more literary phase, if we say, and that literary phase had Tagore and also like other writers of Bangla. Now, if we go back to the roots, then the roots were his parents. So his father had a very interesting literary inclination. He grew up in Bhabalpur. Tapan Sinha grew up in Bhabalpur at his sister's place, and they had a very literary culture in their home. So these are the influences which you have. And his mother was an exponent of Bangla song, music and Rabindra Sangeet. And that is the reason why you will see that there is so rich musicality in his films. Not only is it that he gave music to his films, but also in general, like in Jinder Bandi, I think it's Ali Akbar Khan.
Yeah.
So you will find that there is a medley in Jinder Bandi when Uttam Kumar is just the first time when we see the original Shankar Singh.
Yeah.
Shankar Singh is the character, right? So you will find there is a medley. So these type of improvisations he did, and he made his own medley in Otithi.
Yes.
So these are the background, but with 1960s, mid 1960s, I think he was disinterested with the politics of the state, and so he started making films, writing films. Very important film at that point is Sagina Mahato, because he was marked by the people in power with Sagina Mahato.
Okay.
He had problems henceforth in having his films released and like his films being appreciated and so on and so forth. Post Sagina Mahato, because there were certain dialogues which were very, very obvious dialogues, which were not going down well with the establishment. And then he made like Atonko and those films which I have termed in this book as the Conscience trilogy. Like the Calcutta trilogy was the one with Akhoni Aponjon and Raja, and then his children's films and Agde Chilo Des, those films. And then in 1982, he is making a film called Aladal about a rape.
Yeah.
at a time when it was not something which was that prevalent in the newspapers. Like, if we look at it from that perspective, he was making films which were ahead of times, in a sense, because Adalote Ekti Mei was not something which was very prevalent in 1980-81, but it became prevalent after 20 years or so. So that is the Conscience trilogy. But with Soumitra, he started making a film with Soumitra and Madhubi called Abhimanyu. I'm forgetting the date, but it must be in the late 70s. That was remade in Hindi as a documentary.
Yeah, which is one of the best of Pankaj Kapoor's.
And also of Tapan Sinha, because he probably, he had one thing I will also want to add about Tapan Sinha, apart from his gentlemanliness, is I heard this from one of the leading film critics of India, Shomik Bandyopadhyay, and he told me that Satyajit Ray's unit, they used to, means in his production, used to pay all the crew members on time, and so was Tapan Sinha's.
Okay.
So, without naming anyone, there are courtiers. We watch their films, but they are not probably very timely with the payments.
They didn't look after them.
They didn't look after the crew. So in that way also Tapan Sinha is very important. He went to, we know that he went to London to learn filmmaking. So then he came back. So he had that sort of a production management concept from UK. And that's why his films mostly, that's what I have read, never crossed the time. Like, so the budget and all the stuff, so he was very, very particular and conscious and very sure about what he wants to shoot. So improvisation versus non-improvisation, we can go on debating, but his was like everything, or most of the things were.
Can I